The gunshot cracked through the air like thunder, freezing the angry mob in their tracks as Olivia Wilson stared down the wall of hateful faces, her tear-streaked cheeks burning with humiliation and fear. The stones they had gathered to hurl at her lay scattered at their feet, momentarily forgotten as a lone figure stepped between her and certain death. "Next man who raises a stone against this woman answers to me," came the low, steady voice of Austin Forrester, his Winchester rifle trained on the crowd with unwavering precision. His eyes, blue as a summer sky but cold as winter ice, swept across the faces of the townspeople he'd known his entire life, now transformed into something unrecognizable by their collective rage. It was 1878 in Cottonwood Springs, Arizona Territory, and justice was often as rough as the landscape that surrounded the small mining town. Austin had watched from the shadows as they dragged Olivia from her small homestead cabin at the edge of town, their accusations flying like the very stones they carried. "She's a thief and a liar," shouted Bernard Miller, the town banker whose round face had turned crimson with fury. "She stole from the bank and bewitched my husband," cried Martha Daniels, the blacksmith's wife, her voice shrill with jealousy. Austin held his ground, the rifle steady in his weathered hands. "This isn't justice," he called out, his voice carrying across the town square. "This is madness. Since when do we condemn folks without a trial in Cottonwood Springs?" Olivia trembled behind him, her dress torn and dirty from being dragged through the streets. Her auburn hair had come loose from its pins, falling in wild waves around her shoulders. She'd arrived in Cottonwood Springs just 3 months ago, a young widow seeking a fresh start, and her beauty had immediately set tongues wagging. "You don't know what she's done, Forrester," spat Sheriff Tate, stepping forward from the crowd. "Step aside and let justice take its course." "This ain't justice, and you know it," Austin replied, not lowering his rifle an inch. "If she's done wrong, she deserves a fair trial, not a stoning by a mob whipped into a frenzy by gossip and lies." The sheriff's hand hovered near his pistol. "I'm warning you, Forrester. Don't make an enemy of the whole town for a woman you barely know." Austin felt Olivia's fingers grip the back of his leather vest, felt her trembling against him. "I know enough," he said firmly. "I know that 20 against 1 ain't fair odds, and I know that no crime in this territory warrants what you're fixing to do." The standoff stretched into tense silence, broken only by the distant howl of a coyote and the whisper of wind through the cottonwood trees that gave the town its name. Austin could feel the weight of every eye upon him, could sense the confusion rippling through the crowd as their righteous anger collided with the unexpected obstacle of his intervention. "She stole $500 from the bank," Miller insisted, his jowls quivering with indignation. "We caught her red-handed." "Then arrest her properly," Austin countered. "Let her stand trial. That's how we do things in a civilized town." Sheriff Tate's eyes narrowed. "Since when are you the authority on law and order, Forrester?" "Last I checked, you were just a rancher with more cattle than sense." "And last I checked," Austin replied evenly, "you wore that badge to protect everyone in this town, not just the ones with money and influence." He kept his rifle trained on the crowd but addressed his next words to Olivia without turning. "Miss Wilson, did you steal from the bank?" Her voice came soft but steady behind him. "No, Mr. Forrester, I did not." "She's lying," Martha Daniels shrieked. "She's been lying since the day she arrived." Austin could feel the crowd's anger building again like a coming storm. He'd known most of these people for years, had broken bread with them and helped raise barns alongside them. But in this moment they were strangers, consumed by a darkness he couldn't fully comprehend. "Here's what's going to happen," he announced, his voice cutting through the growing murmurs. "I'm taking Miss Wilson to my ranch. Tomorrow morning, when cooler heads prevail, Sheriff Tate can come out and take her statement. If there's evidence against her, she'll surrender peacefully for a proper trial." "You can't do that," Miller protested. "She's a criminal, she's accused," Austin corrected firmly. "And in America, even out here in the territory, that's not the same thing as guilty." He took a step backward, guiding Olivia with him. "Anyone follows us, they'd best bring their final prayers along. I won't warn twice." The threat hung in the air, potent and clear. Austin Forrester wasn't known as a violent man, but his skill with a rifle was legendary throughout the territory. He'd fought Apaches and outlaws to build his ranch, and few doubted his resolve when pushed. "You're making a mistake, Forrester," Sheriff Tate warned. "One you might not live to regret." Austin didn't reply. Instead, he continued to back away slowly, keeping Olivia behind him and his rifle trained on the mob. When they reached the hitching post where his bay stallion, Thunder, was tethered, he helped her mount before swinging up behind her, never lowering his guard. As they rode out of town at a steady canter, Austin could feel Olivia's body shaking with silent sobs. The road to his ranch wound through 5 miles of rugged country, and he kept his senses alert for any sign of pursuit. "Thank you," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible over the rhythm of Thunder's hooves. "They would have killed me." "Probably," Austin agreed grimly. "Mind telling me what that was all about?" She stiffened slightly against him. "You risked your life without knowing if I was guilty." "I know a lynch mob when I see one," he replied. "And I know that no matter what you might have done, that's not how justice works." He paused, then added more gently, "But now that we're away from there, I'd appreciate knowing what I've gotten myself into." Olivia was silent for so long that Austin wondered if she'd answer at all. When she finally spoke, her voice was tired but resolute. "I worked as a teller at Miller's bank. Yesterday, he accused me of stealing $500 that went missing from the day's deposits, but I didn't take it, I think." She hesitated. "I think Miller himself took it and needed someone to blame." "That's a serious accusation," Austin observed, guiding Thunder around a sharp bend in the trail. "No more serious than the one he made against me," she countered. "But there's more. Martha Daniels believes I've been involved with her husband. I haven't. Thomas Daniels has been kind to me, nothing more. But in a town like Cottonwood Springs, kindness to a young widow is easily misinterpreted." Austin nodded, though she couldn't see the gesture. "Small towns breed big gossip." "I came here to start fresh," Olivia continued, a note of despair creeping into her voice. "After my husband died in the war, there was nothing left for me in Missouri. I thought I could build something here." The sun was beginning to set, painting the desert landscape in shades of gold and crimson. Austin's ranch house came into view as they crested a small rise, a sturdy 2-story structure built of local stone and timber, with a wide porch and smoking chimney that suggested his foreman had maintained the home fires in his absence. "You're safe here for now," Austin told her as they approached. "But come morning, we'll need to figure out how to clear your name. A person can't outrun accusations in this territory. They follow faster than dust in a windstorm." Olivia nodded wearily. "I don't know how to prove my innocence. It's my word against Miller's, and he's a respected businessman while I'm just an outsider," Austin finished for her. "I know something about that myself." As they dismounted in front of the ranch house, the door opened to reveal Hector Vasquez, Austin's foreman of 5 years. The older man's eyebrows rose at the sight of Olivia, but he asked no questions as he took Thunder's reins. "Trouble in town?" he asked simply. "The kind that follows us home," Austin confirmed. Miss Wilson needs sanctuary for the night, maybe longer. Hector nodded, his weathered face revealing nothing of his thoughts. Maria has supper ready. I'll have her prepare the guest room. Inside, the ranch house was warm and inviting, with simple but solid furniture and the delicious aroma of Maria Vasquez's cooking filling the air. The housekeeper, Hector's wife of 30 years, emerged from the kitchen wiping her hands on her apron, her expression shifting from welcome to concern as she took in Olivia's disheveled appearance. "Dios mío," she murmured. "What happened to this poor girl?" "A misunderstanding in town," Austin explained, deliberately vague. "She needs a safe place to stay and perhaps some clean clothes." Maria's kind eyes assessed Olivia. "Come with me, Nina. We'll get you settled while the men talk." After the women disappeared upstairs, Hector fixed Austin with a questioning gaze. "What kind of misunderstanding brings a young woman to your ranch looking like she's been dragged behind a horse?" Austin sighed, pouring himself a measure of whiskey from the decanter on the sideboard. "Nearly that bad. They were going to stone her, Hector, a proper mob with Sheriff Tate standing by and doing nothing to stop it." Hector crossed himself. "For what crime?" "Miller claims she stole from the bank. Martha Daniels thinks she's been warming Thomas's bed." Austin took a long swallow of whiskey. "She denies both accusations." "And you believe her?" Austin considered the question. "I believe she deserves better than what that mob had planned. Beyond that," he shrugged, "I've only exchanged pleasantries with her in town." But something about Miller's accusation doesn't sit right. He's been looking for ways to expand his bank, and $500 would help with that. Hector lowered his voice. "The town won't like you interfering. They'll see it as you choosing an outsider over your neighbors." "They stopped being neighbors the moment they picked up those stones," Austin replied grimly. "Besides, my father built this ranch when Cottonwood Springs was nothing but a watering hole for cattle drives. If anyone's a true local, it's the Forrester family." Later, after a quiet dinner during which Olivia spoke little but ate gratefully, Austin found himself alone with her on the porch. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamond dust across the vast Arizona sky. In the clean dress Maria had provided, with her hair combed and braided, Olivia looked less like a fugitive and more like what she was, a young woman caught in circumstances beyond her control. "Why did you help me, Mr. Forrester?" she asked suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "You could have been killed." Austin considered his answer carefully. "My father taught me that a man who stands by while injustice happens is party to it." He paused, looking out at the darkened landscape. "And I've seen what mobs can do. During the war, I watched good men turn into monsters when they moved as a crowd. It's something I swore I'd never abide if I could help it." Olivia's green eyes studied his profile in the lantern light. "You fought in the war, Union cavalry," he confirmed. "Came home in '65 to find my father dead and the ranch nearly in ruins. Took 5 years to build it back up." He didn't mention the nightmares that still plagued him, the memories of battlefields strewn with the broken bodies of men who'd once had futures, hopes, dreams. "My husband, James, never came home," Olivia said softly. "Shiloh, they said it was quick, but I've always wondered if that was just something they tell widows for comfort." Austin nodded, understanding her unspoken question. "Sometimes it is quick, more often." He let the thought trail off. "I'm sorry for your loss." "It was 6 years ago," she replied. "The pain dulls, but the absence remains." After a moment, she added, "I truly didn't steal that money, Mr. Forrester. And I have never given Thomas Daniels any reason to think I welcomed his attentions as anything more than friendship." "I believe you," Austin said, surprising himself with the realization that he genuinely did. "And please, call me Austin." If we're going to be at odds with the entire town, we might as well be on familiar terms. A small smile curved her lips. Austin, then, and I'm Olivia. Well, Olivia Wilson, we have a challenge ahead of us. He turned to face her fully. To clear your name, we need to find out what really happened to that money. And to do that, we need to be smarter than Bernard Miller. He keeps meticulous records, Olivia offered. Every transaction is logged twice, once in the daily ledger and once in the master accounts book. If the money truly went missing from yesterday's deposits, there should be a discrepancy between what was recorded as received and what was logged in the master book at day's end. Austin's eyebrows rose. You know a lot about banking for a teller. My father was a banker in St. Louis, she explained. He taught me the business from the time I was old enough to count. It's why Miller hired me, despite his misgivings about employing a woman. And where would these books be kept? The daily ledger stays on the counter during business hours, then goes into the safe at night. The master accounts book never leaves Miller's office, it's locked in his desk. Austin nodded thoughtfully. So to prove your innocence, we need to compare those books. Yes, but Olivia's eyes widened as she realized what he was suggesting. We can't break into the bank. That would only confirm their suspicions about me, not break in, Austin corrected. At least not in the way you're thinking. A plan was already forming in his mind. Miller hosts a dinner at his home every month for the town's business leaders. The next one is tomorrow night. I've never attended, but I'm always invited as one of the largest landowners in the county. Olivia shook her head. He'll never let me near the bank again. No, but he might let me in, Austin mused. If I approach him with a proposal for financing some improvements to the ranch, something I've considered anyway, he might be willing to meet at the bank to discuss terms. And then what? Olivia asked, skepticism clear in her voice. And then, Austin said with a slight smile, we find a way to get a look at those books. But first, we need to get through tomorrow morning when Sheriff Tate comes calling. As if summoned by his words, the distant sound of hoofbeats reached them. Austin tensed, his hand moving instinctively to the pistol at his hip. That's not Tate, he said, listening carefully. Too many horses, moving too fast. He guided Olivia quickly into the house, calling for Hector as he did. Get the rifles, he ordered his foreman. And take the women to the back room. What is it? Olivia asked, fear edging her voice. Probably nothing good, Austin replied grimly, checking his revolver before positioning himself by the front window. Decent folks don't ride like that after dark. The riders, 6 of them, pulled up in the yard, their horses blowing hard from the pace they'd set. In the moonlight, Austin recognized Thomas Daniels and 2 of Miller's clerks among them. The others were ranch hands from neighboring properties, men he knew by sight if not by name. Forrester. Thomas Daniels called out, "We know you've got her in there. Send her out and there won't be any trouble." Austin opened the door but remained in the threshold, his revolver visible in his hand. "There's already trouble, Daniels." 6 men riding armed onto another man's property after dark, that's the definition of trouble in this territory. "We just want the woman," one of the clerks, a weedy young man named Parsons, declared. "She's a thief and she needs to face justice." "She'll face justice tomorrow when Sheriff Tate comes to take her statement," Austin replied evenly. "Until then, she's under my protection as a guest in my home." Thomas Daniels spat on the ground. "Protection? Is that what you call it? First she tries to seduce me, and when that fails, she turns her wiles on you." Austin's jaw tightened at the accusation. "Miss Wilson hasn't turned anything on me except gratitude for basic human decency, something you boys seem to be lacking tonight." "We're not leaving without her," Daniels insisted. "Then you're not leaving alive," came Hector's voice as he appeared at the window to Austin's left, rifle in hand. "The boss said the lady stays. That's final." The standoff stretched for several tense moments, the only sounds the snorting of horses and the creak of saddle leather as the men shifted uneasily. Finally, Parsons spoke up. "This isn't over, Forrester. The whole town knows what she did. You can't protect her forever." "I don't need forever," Austin replied coldly. "Just long enough to get to the truth. Now ride out and tell Miller that if he wants to discuss this like a civilized man, I'll be in town tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, the next riders who come uninvited will be greeted with lead instead of words." Reluctantly, the men turned their horses and rode back toward town, leaving a cloud of dust and tension in their wake. Austin holstered his revolver and closed the door, his expression grim. "I'm so sorry," Olivia said from the doorway to the kitchen, where she'd been listening. "I never meant to bring this trouble to your door." Austin shook his head. "Trouble has a way of finding me regardless, but this confirms one thing: they're scared of something. Miller sent those men to retrieve you before you could talk to the sheriff officially. That suggests he's got something to hide. Or he truly believes I'm guilty and doesn't want me to escape justice," Olivia countered. "If that were the case, Sheriff Tate would have led that party, not a blacksmith and 2 bank clerks." Austin ran a hand through his hair. "No, there's something more going on here, and tomorrow we start figuring out what it is." That night, Austin slept lightly, waking at every sound from outside. His room was across the hall from the guest room where Olivia slept, and more than once, he thought he heard soft movements suggesting she was as restless as he was. When dawn finally broke, he rose and found her already in the kitchen, helping Maria prepare breakfast. "You didn't need to do that," he said, pouring himself coffee from the pot on the stove. "I'm not one to sit idle while others work," Olivia replied, kneading dough for biscuits with practiced ease. "Besides, it helps me think." "And what are you thinking?" Austin asked, leaning against the counter. She paused, flour dusting her forearms. "That I need to leave after breakfast. I can't put you and your people at risk any longer." "And go where?" Austin challenged. "The next town is 30 miles away. You wouldn't make it before they caught up to you." "I'd rather take my chances on the trail than bring more armed men to your door," she insisted. Austin shook his head firmly. "That's not happening. We stand a better chance of clearing your name together than apart. Besides," he added with a hint of a smile, "I've already committed to being your champion. A man doesn't abandon that kind of oath halfway through." "You made no oath to me," Olivia pointed out, though her expression had softened. "Not in words," Austin agreed. "But actions speak louder, don't they?" Before she could respond, Hector appeared in the doorway. "Rider coming. It's the sheriff alone," Austin nodded. "Good. Let's hear what he has to say." Sheriff Tate looked uncomfortable as he sat in Austin's study, declining coffee but accepting a glass of water. At 55, Tate was a veteran of frontier law enforcement, his weathered face bearing the scars of decades of service. Austin had always respected the man, which made his involvement in yesterday's events all the more disappointing. "I didn't approve of what happened in town yesterday," Tate began without preamble. "Got caught up in events before I could get control of the situation." "Seemed to me you were leading the charge, not getting caught up in it," Austin observed coolly. Tate's expression hardened. "Miller has a lot of influence in this town. When he declared the girl had stolen from him, people were quick to believe it. By the time I got there, the mob had already formed. And your badge wasn't enough to disperse them." "My badge works because people respect it," Tate countered. "If I tried to stop them by force, I'd have lost that respect and probably my life in the bargain." Austin studied the older man. "So why are you here now? To arrest Miss Wilson, to take her statement as you suggested. Tate sighed heavily. Look, Forrester, I've known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper. Your father was a good man who helped build this community. I owe it to his memory to at least hear the girl out. She has a name, Austin said firmly, Miss Olivia Wilson, and she deserves the same respect you'd show any citizen of this territory. Tate nodded reluctantly. Fair enough. Where is she? Olivia joined them moments later, composed despite the circumstances. She sat beside Austin on the leather sofa, her back straight and her hands folded neatly in her lap. For the next hour, she answered Tate's questions clearly and directly, explaining her role at the bank, the procedures for handling deposits, and her version of the events leading to Miller's accusation. So you're saying Miller himself took the money? Tate asked skeptically. I'm saying the money was accounted for when I balanced my drawer at the end of the day, Olivia replied firmly. If it went missing after that, someone else must have taken it, and since only Miller and the head clerk, Mr. Evans, have access to the safe after hours, it had to be one of them. That's a serious accusation against prominent men, Tate warned. No more serious than the one they've made against me, Olivia countered, echoing her words to Austin the previous night. Tate stroked his mustache thoughtfully. Even if I believe you, and I'm not saying I do, it's your word against Miller's, and in this town, that's not a contest you're likely to win. Unless we can prove she's telling the truth, Austin interjected. Sheriff, has anyone actually verified that money is missing? Has anyone other than Miller counted the contents of the safe? A flicker of uncertainty crossed Tate's face. Miller reported the theft. As the bank's owner, his word is generally sufficient. Generally, yes, but when a person's reputation and possibly their life hangs in the balance, seems to me that warrants a more thorough investigation. Tate was silent for a moment, considering. What do you propose? Let me meet with Miller this afternoon, Austin suggested. I've been meaning to discuss financing some improvements to the ranch. During that meeting, you make an official visit to the bank to investigate the alleged theft. Count the safe's contents, compare it to the records. Miller won't allow that without a warrant, Tate objected. Then get a warrant, Austin said simply. Judge Peterson respects you. If you tell him you need to verify the facts in a theft case, he'll sign one. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. Miller won't like it. Miller doesn't have to like it. The law is the law. Austin leaned forward. Unless, of course, there's some reason you're reluctant to investigate one of the town's leading citizens. The implied question hung in the air. Was Tate in Miller's pocket? The sheriff's face reddened, but whether from anger or embarrassment was unclear. I uphold the law for everyone, Forrester, he said stiffly. Rich or poor. Then prove it, Austin challenged. Investigate properly. If Miss Wilson is guilty, evidence will confirm it. If not. He left the sentence unfinished. Tate rose, adjusting his gun belt. I'll speak to Judge Peterson. But the girl stays here until this is resolved, understand. I don't want her leaving the territory. She's not going anywhere, Austin assured him, standing as well. And Sheriff, those men who rode out here last night, Daniels and the others, they were looking for trouble. Might be worth reminding them that taking the law into their own hands is a good way to end up on the wrong side of it. After Tate departed, Olivia turned to Austin, her expression a mixture of hope and skepticism. Do you think he'll actually investigate? Tate's a lot of things, but I've never known him to be corrupt, Austin replied. Pride might have kept him from stepping in yesterday, but now that he's had time to think, his conscience will bother him. Besides, he added with a slight smile, I implied he might be in Miller's pocket. A suggestion like that will sting a proud man like Tate into action just to prove me wrong. And your meeting with Miller, that's still happening. While Tate's investigating the safe, I'll try to get a look at those books you mentioned. Austin checked his pocket watch. I should head into town soon if I want to catch Miller before the bank closes. Olivia caught his arm as he turned to leave. Be careful. If Miller did take that money, he's desperate enough to accuse an innocent woman of theft. There's no telling what else he might do. Austin covered her hand with his own, surprised by the warmth that spread through him at the simple contact. I've faced worse odds than one greedy banker. It's not just Miller I'm worried about, she said softly. The whole town seemed ready to believe the worst of me yesterday. They might feel the same about anyone who defends me. Let them, Austin replied with more confidence than he felt. Cottonwood Springs has prospered partly because my ranch brings business and employment to the area. They'll think twice before turning against me completely. The ride into town was tense, with Austin constantly scanning the landscape for signs of ambush. But he reached Cottonwood Springs without incident, noting the curious and sometimes hostile stares that followed him as he rode down the main street. He tied Thunder outside the bank and straightened his best jacket, not exactly city finery, but respectable enough for a rancher doing business. Inside, the bank was quiet, with only one teller, Evans, the head clerk, helping an elderly customer. The man's eyes widened when he saw Austin, and he quickly excused himself to disappear into the back office. Moments later, Bernard Miller emerged, his round face carefully composed into a neutral expression. "Mr. Forrester," he greeted with forced cordiality. "This is unexpected." "Mr. Miller," Austin replied with a nod. "I was hoping to discuss a business proposition with you, ranch improvements I've been considering that might require financing." Miller's eyebrows rose slightly. "I see. Well, normally I'd be delighted to discuss such matters, but given the current situation, perhaps another time would be better. I don't see why my financial affairs should be affected by unrelated matters," Austin said smoothly. "Unless, of course, you're suggesting that your personal grievances influence your business decisions. That would be concerning for all your customers to hear." The implied threat wasn't subtle, and Miller's face flushed. "Of course not. Please come into my office." As they settled into the wood-paneled room, Austin noted the large desk with its locked drawer where, according to Olivia, the master account's book would be kept. On the desktop itself sat several ledgers, including what appeared to be the daily transaction record. "Now, about this financing," Miller began, steepling his fingers. "What sort of improvements are you considering?" Austin launched into a detailed explanation of his plans to expand the ranch's cattle operation and possibly add a small horse breeding program, watching Miller carefully as he spoke. The banker seemed distracted, his eyes frequently darting to the window that overlooked the street. "It would require a substantial loan," Austin concluded, "but the potential return would make it a sound investment for your bank." Yes, it sounds promising," Miller replied absently. "I'll need to review your existing financials, of course," and he broke off as the bank's front door opened, and Sheriff Tate entered, accompanied by Judge Peterson. Miller's face paled visibly. "Excuse me a moment," he said to Austin, rising quickly. "It appears I have some unexpected visitors." As Miller hurried out to the main room, Austin seized the opportunity to examine the daily ledger still sitting on the desk. Flipping to the entries from 2 days ago, the day of the alleged theft, he quickly scanned the transactions. Just as Olivia had described, each deposit was meticulously recorded, with the final tally showing the day's business. There was no indication of any discrepancy. Austin could hear raised voices from the main room, Miller protesting, Tate insisting, the judge's authoritative tones cutting through both. Working quickly, Austin tried the drawer where the master account's book should be kept. Locked as expected. He glanced around the office and spotted a ring of keys hanging on a hook behind the desk. Taking a chance, he grabbed the keys and tried them in the lock. The third key worked, and the drawer slid open to reveal a large, leather-bound book. Austin pulled it out and rapidly turned to the entries corresponding to the date in the daily ledger. What he found confirmed Olivia's suspicions. The amount recorded in the master book was exactly $500 less than what had been logged in the daily record. Someone had altered the entry, and since Olivia had no access to this book, it couldn't have been her. Austin heard footsteps approaching and quickly replaced the book, locking the drawer and returning the keys to their hook just as Miller re-entered, his face now flushed with anger. "I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Forrester. It seems our sheriff has taken it upon himself to conduct an audit of my bank based on nothing more than the lies of a thieving woman." "Just doing his job, I imagine," Austin replied calmly. "After all, a theft is a serious matter." "Better to be thorough, wouldn't you agree?" Miller's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "You put him up to this, didn't you?" "I merely suggested that a proper investigation would benefit everyone, including you, Mr. Miller. After all, if Miss Wilson is guilty as you claim, evidence will prove it beyond doubt." "The evidence already exists," Miller snapped. "The money is missing and she was the last to handle it." Austin leaned back in his chair, affecting a casual posture that belied his racing thoughts. "Curious, then, that I just saw two different figures for the same day's transactions, one in your daily ledger and another in your master accounts book. Almost exactly $500 difference." Miller's face went from flushed to ashen in an instant. You went through my private records." "I observed what was in plain sight," Austin replied, the lie coming easily when weighed against the greater injustice at stake. "Perhaps you can explain the discrepancy to Sheriff Tate. I'm sure he'd be most interested." Before Miller could respond, the office door opened again and Tate entered, his expression grim. "Mr. Miller, I've completed my count of the safe's contents. According to your own records, there should be $12,437 present." "I counted exactly that amount." "That's impossible," Miller sputtered. "There's $500 missing." "Not according to the deposit records," Tate countered. "Everything balances perfectly." "The daily ledger must be wrong then," Austin saw his opening. "Or perhaps the master accounts book was altered after the fact," he suggested innocently. "A simple way to create the appearance of a theft where none occurred." Miller's face contorted with rage. "How dare you? This is my bank. You have no right to make such accusations." "It's not an accusation, merely an observation," Austin replied coolly. "One that could be easily verified by comparing the two books." Judge Peterson, who had followed Tate into the office, spoke up for the first time. "I believe that's an excellent suggestion, Mr. Forrester. Sheriff, please examine both records." As Tate reached for the daily ledger, Miller lunged forward, grabbing for the book. "This is an outrage. I won't have my business practices questioned by..." His protest was cut short as Austin rose and caught his arm in a firm grip. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Miller. Interfering with a law enforcement investigation tends to make a man look guilty." The next few minutes unfolded with the inevitable logic of a collapsing house of cards. Tate retrieved the master accounts book, using the keys Austin discreetly pointed out, and the discrepancy was quickly confirmed. Under the combined scrutiny of the sheriff and judge, Miller's composure crumbled completely. "It was just a temporary measure," he finally admitted, slumping into his chair. "The mine investment went bad, and I needed to cover the loss before the bank examiners arrived next month. I was going to replace it. by blaming an innocent woman and allowing her to be almost killed by a mob? Austin asked, disgust evident in his voice. Miller had no answer for that, his eyes fixed on the floor in shame or calculation. Austin couldn't tell which. Bernard Miller, I'm placing you under arrest for fraud and filing a false report, Tate declared, drawing his handcuffs. Judge Peterson will determine what other charges may apply. As Miller was led away, Austin felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Olivia was vindicated, at least regarding the theft. But the damage to her reputation might not be so easily repaired, particularly concerning Martha Daniels's accusations about her husband. That concern was partially addressed when Austin emerged from the bank to find Thomas Daniels waiting anxiously on the boardwalk. Is it true? Daniels asked without preamble. Miller confessed he did, Austin confirmed. Miss Wilson was telling the truth all along. Daniels had the grace to look ashamed. I need to speak with her, to apologize. For what part? Austin asked coldly. Participating in a mob that nearly killed her, or allowing your wife to believe she'd been pursuing you, the blacksmith flinched. Both, I suppose. The truth is, Martha's accusation was baseless. Miss Wilson never encouraged me in any way. Martha has jealousy issues. When she saw me speaking politely to Miss Wilson in the street, she constructed an entire affair in her imagination. And rather than correct your wife, you allowed an innocent woman to bear the blame. I was a coward, Daniels admitted. It was easier to let Martha believe what she wanted than to confront her delusions again. But I never thought it would go so far. Austin studied the man, weighing his apparent remorse against the harm he'd allowed to happen. Your apology should wait until Miss Wilson is ready to hear it, if she ever is. In the meantime, you might start by telling your wife and the rest of the town the truth. By the time Austin returned to the ranch, word of Miller's arrest had already spread. Olivia was waiting on the porch, her face alight with cautious hope as he dismounted. Is it true? She asked, echoing Daniels's earlier question. Hector heard it from a supply driver who passed through town. It's true, Austin confirmed, joining her on the porch. Miller confessed to taking the money himself and framing you to cover his theft. And Daniels admitted his wife's accusations were completely fabricated out of jealousy. Olivia's composure finally broke, tears of relief streaming down her face. Austin hesitated only briefly before drawing her into his arms, offering the comfort of human contact after her ordeal. It's over, he murmured against her hair. Your name is cleared. She pulled back slightly to look up at him, her green eyes shining with tears and something else, gratitude, yes, but also a warmth that stirred something long dormant in Austin's heart. Because of you, she said softly. You were the only one who stood up for me. The only one who believed in me when everyone else was ready to condemn me without evidence. I just did what any decent person should have done, Austin replied, uncomfortable with her praise. But they didn't. Only you. Her hands rested lightly on his chest, and Austin became acutely aware of their proximity, of the delicate floral scent of her hair, of the way the setting sun gilded her features in soft gold. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then, with visible effort, Olivia stepped back, composing herself. I should make arrangements to leave, she said, her voice steadier now. I've imposed on your hospitality long enough. Austin felt an unexpected pang at her words. There's no hurry. You're welcome to stay until you decide what you want to do next. That's very kind, but... She hesitated. Even with my name cleared, I doubt Cottonwood Springs will ever truly accept me now. Too much has happened. Perhaps, Austin acknowledged, but running away won't solve that. Sometimes the braver choice is to stay and rebuild, to show by your actions what kind of person you truly are." Olivia considered his words. "Is that what you did? After the war?" Austin nodded slowly. "Coming home was the hardest thing I've ever done. The ranch was failing, my father was gone, and I carried memories no man should have to bear. It would have been easier to keep drifting, to lose myself somewhere no one knew me. But this land—" He gestured to the vista spreading before them. "This land has been in my family for 3 generations. Walking away would have dishonored their struggle to build something lasting here." "You have deep roots," Olivia observed. "I envy that. Since James died, I've felt adrift. Cottonwood Springs was supposed to be my fresh start, my chance to put down roots of my own." "It still can be," Austin suggested, "if you're willing to fight for it." Their conversation was interrupted by Maria calling them to dinner. As they ate, Austin found himself watching Olivia, the graceful way she moved, the intelligence in her eyes, the quiet strength that had sustained her through her ordeal. He realized with some surprise that he didn't want her to leave, not just yet. Over the next few days, as news of Miller's confession spread throughout the county, the town's attitude toward Olivia began to shift. Several citizens, ashamed of their role in the mob, sent letters of apology to the ranch. Martha Daniels, confronted with her husband's admission, publicly retracted her accusations. Sheriff Tate himself rode out to formally apologize for failing to protect her. "The bank's board of directors has asked me to extend an offer," Tate told Olivia during his visit. "They'd like you to return to your position, with a substantial increase in salary as compensation for what happened." Austin, who was present for the conversation, watched Olivia carefully as she considered the offer. "I appreciate their gesture," she said finally. "But I don't think I can work there again. Too many memories now." Tate nodded in understanding. "Can't say I blame you, but if you're planning to stay in the territory, they've authorized me to provide a letter of recommendation that should help you secure employment elsewhere." "That's very kind," Olivia replied. "I'll need to think about my next steps." After Tate departed, Austin found Olivia on his favorite spot on the ranch, a small rise overlooking the valley, where cottonwood trees provided shade from the afternoon sun. She stood with her back to him, gazing out at the landscape, the breeze gently lifting her auburn hair. "It's beautiful here," she said without turning, somehow sensing his presence. "So vast and yet intimate in its way, like it's sharing its secrets with you if you listen closely enough." Austin moved to stand beside her. "My mother used to say something similar. She claimed the land spoke to those who belonged to it." "And do you believe that?" Olivia asked, turning to look at him. "I believe there's a connection between people and places," he replied thoughtfully. "Some folks never find the place they truly belong. Others recognize it instantly, like meeting an old friend after a long separation. And this is your place." "It is," Austin confirmed. "Has been since before I was born, but that doesn't mean it can't be someone else's place too." The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken but unmistakable. During the days Olivia had spent at the ranch, something had grown between them, a connection neither had anticipated but both increasingly acknowledged, at least to themselves. "I've been offered another position," Olivia said after a moment. "Mrs. Henderson at the school board approached me yesterday when I was in town with Maria. They need a teacher for the older children, someone with knowledge of mathematics and business principles to prepare them for practical careers." "That sounds perfect for you," Austin observed. "Will you accept?" "I'm considering it," she replied. "It would mean staying in Cottonwood Springs, facing the people who were so quick to judge me. It would also mean showing them the kind of person you truly are: educated, compassionate, resilient." Olivia smiled at his assessment. You see me in a very flattering light, Mr. Forrester. Austin, he reminded her gently, and I see you as you are a remarkable woman who deserves every chance at happiness. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition of possibilities neither had dared voice aloud. Then Olivia looked away, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. I should head back to the house, she said. I promised Maria I'd help with dinner preparations. As she turned to go, Austin caught her hand. Olivia, he began, suddenly uncertain of what he wanted to say. There were feelings stirring in him that he hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever, but putting them into words seemed premature, presumptuous even. She waited, her expression open and curious. I'm glad you're considering staying, he finally said, releasing her hand. So am I, she replied with a small smile before walking back toward the ranch house. In the weeks that followed, Olivia accepted the teaching position and moved into a small cottage near the schoolhouse. Austin found himself riding into town more frequently than he had in years, often timing his visits to coincide with the end of the school day. Their friendship deepened naturally, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. The town, true to Austin's prediction, gradually adjusted to the new reality. Most citizens, embarrassed by their participation in or tacit approval of the mob, went out of their way to make amends to Olivia. A few holdouts, unable to admit their error, maintained a cool distance, but their numbers dwindled as Olivia proved herself an exceptional teacher who genuinely cared for her students. By the time autumn painted the cottonwoods gold, Austin could no longer deny the truth: he had fallen in love with Olivia Wilson. The realization came to him one evening as he watched her interact with his ranch hand's children during a harvest celebration at the ranch. She had organized games for them, her laughter mingling with theirs as they raced across the yard, her hair coming loose from its pins in the exertion. She fits here, Hector observed, coming to stand beside Austin. Like she was always meant to be part of this place. Austin nodded, unable to articulate the emotions swelling in his chest. She does. So when are you going to tell her? The foreman asked bluntly. Tell her what? Hector gave him a knowing look. That you're in love with her. It's obvious to everyone except perhaps the two of you. Austin started to deny it, then sighed in resignation. It's complicated, Hector. She's only just established herself here, found her independence again. The last thing she needs is a good man who respects her and sees her true worth, Hector interrupted. I think that's exactly what she needs. What you both need. Before Austin could respond, Olivia approached, her cheeks flushed from the games and her eyes bright with enjoyment. Your ranch children are trying to convince me that you once rode a wild Mustang backwards through town on a dare, she told him, amusement dancing in her expression. Please tell me that's an exaggeration. Hector chuckled and excused himself, leaving Austin to defend his youthful exploits. Not entirely, he admitted. Though in my defense, I was 17 and trying to impress Sarah Mitchell. Ah, a lady was involved, Olivia teased. That explains much. She married the banker's son 3 months later, so clearly my horsemanship wasn't as impressive as I thought. Olivia laughed, the sound warming Austin more than the bonfire blazing nearby. Well, her loss is. She trailed off, suddenly self-conscious. Is what? Austin prompted gently. She met his gaze, something vulnerable and hopeful in her eyes. Is someone else's gain, perhaps? The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Maria called everyone to the tables laden with food, and the spell was broken. But something had shifted, an acknowledgement of feelings too strong to be contained much longer. The opportunity to express those feelings came a week later. When Austin invited Olivia to ride with him to a special place on the ranch, a hidden valley where a small lake nestled among cottonwood trees. Their golden leaves reflected perfectly in the still water. "It's breathtaking," Olivia exclaimed as they dismounted by the shore. "How is it I've never seen this place before?" "It's not visible from the main trails," Austin explained, spreading a blanket on the grass and unpacking the picnic lunch Maria had prepared. "My father used to bring my mother here for special occasions. He proposed to her on that rock outcropping over there." Olivia glanced at him curiously. "It must have been a happy marriage for the place to hold such meaning for you." "It was," Austin confirmed, pouring coffee from a thermos. "They had their disagreements, like any couple, but there was never any doubt about their devotion to each other." He paused, gathering his courage. "My father once told me that the secret was finding someone who makes you want to be better than you are and who believes you already are better than you think." "Wise words," Olivia murmured, accepting the cup he offered. "My parents had a similar bond, though they expressed it differently. My father was quite reserved, but he would leave little notes for my mother, poems, observations, sometimes just a line telling her she was beautiful. After he died, we found hundreds of them tucked away in her dresser drawers." Austin watched her profile as she gazed out at the lake, sunlight dancing in her auburn hair. "Olivia," he began, his heart pounding so hard he was certain she must hear it, "I brought you here for a reason." She turned to him, her expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Yes. These past months getting to know you, they've changed me, changed how I see the future." Austin took a deep breath. "I've lived alone for a long time, convinced that was how it would always be, but now I can't imagine tomorrow without you in it." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, but her smile was radiant. "Austin, I'm not asking for an answer today," he hastened to add. "I know this might seem sudden, or that you might want more time to establish yourself here independently. But I wanted you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm here. I love you, Olivia Wilson." She moved closer to him on the blanket, her hand finding his. "It doesn't seem sudden to me," she said softly. "Not when I think about the man who stood alone against an entire town to protect a woman he barely knew. Not when I remember how you saw me, truly saw me, when others only saw what they wanted to see." Austin entwined his fingers with hers, hardly daring to hope. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I love you too," Olivia replied, her voice steady despite the tears now spilling down her cheeks. "I've known it for weeks, perhaps even from that first night on your porch when you spoke about staying to rebuild rather than running away. You showed me what courage looks like, what integrity means." Austin raised his free hand to gently brush away her tears. "So if I were to ask you properly?" "I would say yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." Their first kiss was gentle, a promise sealed under the golden canopy of cottonwood leaves. When they finally drew apart, Austin felt as though something long broken inside him had finally healed. "There's something else I should tell you," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "Something I've never told anyone here." Olivia waited, her hand still in his. "During the war, I was captured at Chancellorsville," Austin began, the memories he'd kept buried for so long finally finding voice. "Spent 4 months in a Confederate prison camp before I escaped. It changed me. Left scars that don't show on the outside. The nightmares," Olivia said with quiet understanding. "I've heard you some nights when I stayed at the ranch, the way you call out in your sleep." Austin nodded, surprised but grateful for her perception. "They come less often now, but yes. Sometimes I'm back there in that place of hunger and desperation. Other times I'm on the battlefield again, watching friends fall around me." "My James had similar demons," Olivia revealed. Before Shiloh, he wrote to me about the things he'd seen, the weight he carried. I think all who survive such horrors must find their own way to live with the memories. You understand, then, what you'd be taking on." She touched his face gently. "I understand that the man I love has known darkness but chosen light. That the compassion you showed me comes from having seen its absence. Your experiences are part of who you are, Austin, the man I want to build a life with." They were married in the spring of 1879, when the cottonwoods were bright with new green leaves and wildflowers carpeted the valley. The entire town turned out for the celebration, a testament to how fully both had been embraced by the community they had chosen to call home. As years passed, the story of how they met became something of a legend in Cottonwood Springs, the day a lone cowboy stood against a mob to protect an innocent woman, and in doing so, found his heart's companion. The Forrester ranch prospered under their joint stewardship, as did the school where Olivia continued to teach until their first child was born. They had 3 children, eventually 2 sons and a daughter who grew up strong and true under the vast Arizona sky, learning from their parents the values of courage, integrity, and unwavering love. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the day's work was done, Austin and Olivia would often sit together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. "You ever regret it?" Austin asked her once, many years into their marriage. "Staying in a town that once turned against you?" Olivia's hand found his, the gesture as natural as breathing after so long together. "Never," she replied with certainty. "How could I regret the place that brought me to you, where I would be standing if not for that terrible day?" "Where indeed?" Austin murmured, lifting her hand to his lips. For in the end, it wasn't the land or the town that had become home for either of them, it was each other. The lone cowboy who had drawn his rifle against injustice, and the woman brave enough to rebuild her life from the ashes of false accusation, had found in one another a truth more enduring than any lie. That love, when founded on respect and courage, can transform even the darkest moments into the beginning of something beautiful. And as the last light of day faded from the western sky, their silhouettes merged into one against the deepening twilight, 2 people who had found in each other not just love, but home.